And thanks for joining us tonight. A warrant has been issued for a teenager accused of sexually assaulting a woman on the UW campus last month. On April 15th, the 17-year-old, who is not affiliated with the UW, is accused of assaulting an acquaintance on the inside of a residence hall. Now that teen, 17-year-old Riley Jensen, is officially charged with second and third degree sexual assault. Court records indicate he failed to show up for a court appearance earlier this week. An arrest warrant has now been issued. According to the criminal complaint, Jensen was on campus visiting his sister. His presence even prior to the alleged assault, violating two of the university housing's visitor policies. Our Tahlil Mohadin explains. Tahlil?
At Whitty Hall, Jensen is accused of being under the influence and one of two guests staying with a single resident, neither of which is allowed. Now, I took a closer look at UW's visitor policy to find out more about how they enforce the rules and why they aren't stricter. On the UW campus, an open policy for overnight guests.
A friend, a sibling, it could be a parent that might be visiting and just staying overnight. We don't really specify any of that in our policy.
UW housing leaders say anyone is welcome to stay, but they're expected to follow a very specific set of rules.
Visitors are supposed to be escorted by a resident and with a resident, their host resident at all times.
Rules like one guest per room, no stays longer than 3 nights, and no guests under the influence. But enforcing those policies is another story.
Obviously, with any situation like that, there's a human element involved anytime you have residents living in a building, and where we rely to a degree on the residents to let us know when things are happening.
Other major universities in the UW system take their visitor policy to another level. At UW-Oshkosh and UW-Milwaukee, guests are required to show photo ID to building security, something UW officials say isn't feasible in Madison.
On our campus, we have over 20 residence halls. Some of them are very small buildings, and some of them are much larger buildings.
Instead, they're relying on student staff to maintain policy.
House fellow or the staff member needs to either observe them, or it needs to be reported by a resident.
UW housing leaders say residents haven't raised concerns over the visitor policy, so they haven't thought to change them. But security cameras are in first floor entryways, common areas, and in some dorm hallways.